The judge stood up, the judge stood up. At my grandmother's 80th birthday party, the Honorable Marcus Whitfield stood up from his chair, set down his champagne glass, and walked directly to where my uncle had just removed my 8-year-old daughter from the family photo lineup. Emma stood there on the grass, her white party dress catching the late afternoon sun, her hands clasped in front of her the way I'd taught her when she needed to be brave. She wasn't crying. She was watching. My Uncle Robert adjusted his tie and gestured for the photographer to continue. 43 people stood on my grandmother's lawn, pretending they hadn't just watched him tell a child she didn't belong. The photographer looked uncomfortable. Robert smiled at him with all the confidence of a man who had never been told no in his life. Emma walked to the front of the photo arrangement. Not to me, to my grandmother. She leaned up on her toes and whispered something I couldn't hear from where I stood 15 feet away. My grandmother's face went completely still. That particular stillness I'd seen exactly twice before in my life, both times before she destroyed someone's world with perfect composure. She reached into the silk clutch she'd set on the gift table and pulled out an old manila envelope, the kind that yellows at the edges. Her hands didn't shake. Your brother's adoption records show that he is not, in fact, blood family either, my grandmother said. Her voice carried across the entire lawn. I think if we're removing people, Robert, we should start with consistency. Some people in my family still think I went too far with what happened next. They are not entirely wrong. But Robert started it 32 years ago, and I simply finished it. The lawn smelled like fresh-cut grass and the gardenias my grandmother had planted when she bought this house in 1978. The late September sun made everything gold. The photographer had started packing his equipment, clearly deciding he didn't get paid enough for family drama. Robert's face had gone the particular shade of red that meant he was about to start shouting. My daughter walked back to me. I put my hand on her shoulder. She looked up at me with those serious brown eyes and said, "Grandma Helen told me to tell her if anyone was mean, so I did." "You did exactly right," I told her. My mother appeared at my elbow. "Sarah, this is your fault. You've poisoned that child against this family." I didn't respond. I'd learned a long time ago that responding to my mother only gave her more ammunition. Instead, I watched my grandmother hand the envelope to my uncle with the same expression she'd worn when she fired the head of her foundation for embezzling. Calm, final, utterly without mercy. "I think," my grandmother said, "we need to have a family meeting, all of us, right now. Let me tell you how we got here." I was the wrong kind of daughter from the beginning. My mother wanted someone who would marry well, join the country club, chair charity galas, and produce grandchildren who looked good in family Christmas cards. What she got was me. Awkward, too tall, too quiet, too interested in numbers and not interested enough in the social ladder she'd spent 40 years climbing. My father died when I was 7. Heart attack at his desk at 41 years old. My mother remarried within 18 months to Richard, a corporate attorney with the right connections and a daughter 3 years older than me. My stepsister Claire was everything I wasn't. Poised, pretty, socially fluent. My mother loved her immediately in a way she'd never quite managed with me. Robert is my mother's older brother. He married Patricia when I was 12, and Patricia brought her own particular flavor of cruelty to family gatherings. She had opinions about everything. My clothes, my grades, my college choices, my career, my decision to have Emma without a husband. She delivered these opinions with a smile, always prefaced with "I'm just trying to help." The first time I remember being underestimated, I was 16. My mother was hosting Thanksgiving. Robert cornered me in the kitchen while I was washing dishes and told me I should think about community college instead of the state university I'd been accepted to. "Be realistic about your abilities, Sarah. You've always been more of a worker bee than a queen bee. Nothing wrong with that." I didn't argue. I finished the dishes, went upstairs, and called the honors program director who'd been recruiting me. I accepted the full academic scholarship the next morning. I didn't tell my family about the scholarship. I let them think I was paying full tuition with my father's life insurance money. It was easier than explaining. The pattern continued through college. My mother introduced me at parties as my daughter who's studying accounting. She said it the way other people might say my daughter who works at McDonald's. Accounting wasn't glamorous enough. Claire was getting her MBA at a prestigious private university. That was worth bragging about. I graduated summa cum laude. My mother didn't come to graduation. She had a garden party that weekend that she'd committed to months ago. Robert sent a card with $50 in it and a note that said, Now the real work begins. I was hired by a mid-size firm in the city 6 weeks after graduation. Starting salary, $48,000 a year. I shared an apartment with 2 roommates and drove a Honda Civic with 130,000 miles on it. At family gatherings, Robert would ask how the number crunching was going. Patricia would suggest I try to marry up since my career prospects were limited. I met David when I was 25. He was a senior analyst at an investment firm. Smart, kind, ambitious. We dated for 2 years. My family loved him, which should have been my first warning sign. My mother started planning our wedding before he'd even proposed. Claire threw me an engagement shower when we got engaged, filled with her friends, not mine. David left me 6 months before the wedding. He sat in my apartment and told me he'd realized he wanted someone more exciting. Someone who didn't spend evenings working on spreadsheets. Someone more like Claire, actually. They'd been sleeping together for 4 months. The wedding was canceled. The deposits were lost. My mother cried about the embarrassment. Robert gave me a lecture about not being able to keep a man interested. Patricia suggested I try therapy to work on my personality. I had signed my first major client 3 days before David left me. I didn't tell anyone. I worked 80-hour weeks for the next year, building my book of business, proving myself. The firm made me senior analyst when I was 27. My mother told people I was doing okay for myself. When I was 29, 3 of us left the firm to start our own consultancy. We had 4 major clients lined up before we even signed the partnership papers. I took the biggest financial risk. I mortgaged everything. I worked 100-hour weeks. At family Christmas that year, Robert asked if my little business venture was still afloat. I told him we were doing fine. We'd billed $1.2 million in our first 8 months. I didn't mention that part. Emma happened when I was 32. Unplanned, unexpected, the result of a 3-month relationship with someone I'd met at a conference. He made it very clear he wanted no part of fatherhood. I made it very clear I didn't need him for anything. My mother said I was being selfish, bringing a child into the world without a father. Patricia said I'd ruined my life. Robert didn't speak to me for 6 months. I had Emma on a Tuesday morning. She weighed 7 pounds, 3 ounces. She had my eyes and my father's chin. I named her Emma Catherine, after my grandmother and my father's mother. I went back to work 6 weeks later with a nanny I could barely afford and a determination that would have frightened me if I'd stopped long enough to think about it. The firm grew. My partners and I built something real. A client list that included 3 Fortune 500 companies, a reputation for solving problems other consultancies couldn't touch, a staff of 17 people who we paid well and treated fairly. I was still driving the Honda. I was still living modestly. Everything extra went into Emma's education fund and back into the business. At Emma's 3rd birthday party, Claire showed up in a Mercedes and a Cartier watch. She was engaged to a hedge fund manager. My mother spent the entire party talking about the wedding venue Claire had booked. Patricia pulled me aside and said, "It's so sweet that you're doing this all on your own. Very brave. Some women just aren't meant for traditional family life." I smiled. I had closed a consulting contract worth $600,000 that morning. I didn't mention it. The 4th incident I remember clearly was Emma's kindergarten graduation. My mother came, but spent most of it on her phone coordinating something for Claire's wedding. Robert showed up late and left early. Patricia didn't come at all, though she sent a card that said, "Congratulations on this small milestone." After the ceremony, Robert took me aside. "Sarah, I've been thinking. You're doing an admirable job with Emma, but have you thought about what happens as she gets older? Private school, college, all of that costs money. I have a friend who could get you an interview for a corporate position. Steady paycheck, benefits, more stable than whatever you're doing now." I was carrying $4 million in active contracts at that point. My personal income the previous year had been just over $380,000. I owned the Honda outright and had started looking at houses. "I'll think about it," I told him. I bought the house 6 weeks later. 4 bedrooms, good school district, a yard where Emma could play. I paid cash. I didn't tell my family. I told them I was renting a bigger apartment. The pattern was established and unbreakable. They assumed I exceeded, they never noticed. My mother would give me advice about budgeting. Claire would offer me her hand-me-down clothes because I know things are tight for you. Patricia would suggest I look into food assistance programs. If you have ever been counted out by someone who should have known better, you already know what that silence feels like. The weight of it, the way it becomes fuel instead of burden. Emma started 1st grade at a private school I paid for in full each year. My family thought she went to public school. I let them think it. Claire's wedding was that same year, a 300-person affair that my mother talked about for months. I was a bridesmaid. I smiled in the photos. I bought the dress they'd picked out. I didn't mention that my firm had just been approached by a potential buyer interested in acquiring us for a number that would have made my mother choke on her champagne. We didn't sell. We weren't ready. But knowing the number existed changed something in me. Knowing what I'd built had tangible, specific value that someone else recognized even if my family never would. The last incident before the birthday party happened 3 months ago. My mother hosted a Sunday brunch. Emma was playing in the garden with Robert's grandchildren. Patricia was holding court about Claire's new house, a 4-bedroom colonial in an expensive suburb. My mother was appropriately impressed. "Sarah, dear," Patricia said, turning to me with that smile, "are you still doing the consulting thing? I heard the market has been tough lately." "Robert has that friend at the insurance company. I really think you should consider something more stable, especially with Emma to think about." "I'm doing fine," I said. "Oh, I'm sure you are. But fine isn't really enough when you're raising a child alone, is it? You need to think about security. Emma deserves that." Robert nodded. "Patricia's right. Pride is one thing, but you have to be practical. That child needs stability." I had $347,000 in Emma's education fund. I owned my house outright. My firm was on track to gross $8 million that year. I was thinking about buying a vacation property as a rental investment. I didn't say any of that. I sipped my mimosa and let them talk. Everything I had built was about to be tested in front of 43 people who had absolutely no idea it existed. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old books. Patricia Reyes had been my attorney for 3 years, handling corporate contracts and partnership agreements. She was 52, sharp as broken glass, and had a reputation for winning cases other lawyers wouldn't touch. I'd called her the morning after Emma's kindergarten graduation, when Robert had suggested I get a real job. "I need you to do something for me," I told her during our first meeting about this. "I need documentation. Everything. Every asset, every account, every contract. I need it organized in a way that would hold up in court if necessary." Patricia leaned back in her chair. "Are you expecting legal action?" "I'm expecting to need proof," I said, "of what I've built, of what I'm worth, of what they don't know." She studied me for a long moment. "This is about your family." "Yes, and you're not ready to tell them yet." "Not until I decide it's time." She nodded once. "I can do that. But Sarah, when you do this, when you show them, it needs to be airtight. No room for them to claim you're exaggerating or lying. No room for doubt. That's why I'm hiring you." The documentation took 6 months to compile. Every business record, every tax return, every investment account, every asset valuation. Patricia brought in a forensic accountant to verify everything. His name was Marcus Chen, and he had the kind of attention to detail that made him deeply annoying and absolutely essential. "Your net worth is currently $4.7 million, Marcus told me in February, 8 months before my grandmother's birthday party. That includes business equity, real estate, investment accounts, and liquid assets. Your annual income last year was $612,000. Your daughter's education fund contains $347,000. You own your home free and clear, valued at $890,000. You have 0 debt." I looked at the numbers on the spreadsheet. They felt abstract, like they belonged to someone else. "The business is undervalued in this calculation," Patricia added. "If you were to sell tomorrow, you'd likely get 8 to 10 million for your share, but we're using conservative numbers, everything provable." "Good," I said. "I don't want them to have any room to claim I'm inflating things." Marcus glanced at Patricia, then back at me. "Can I ask what this is for?" "Family reunion," I said. He didn't push. The first close call happened in March. My mother called and asked me to come to lunch with her and Claire. She wanted to discuss my grandmother's upcoming birthday party. I met them at a bistro downtown, the kind of place where salads cost $22 and came with edible flowers. Claire was talking about her new position at a consulting firm. She'd been hired as a senior director. My mother was appropriately proud. "They're paying me $275,000 to start," Claire said. "Plus bonuses. Michael thinks I should negotiate for more, but I'm just grateful to be making real money finally." My mother beamed. "That's wonderful, darling. Sarah, isn't that wonderful?" "It's great," I said. Claire smiled at me. "How's your little firm doing? Are you still managing to keep clients?" "We're doing fine." "I'm sure you are. It's just the market has been tough. A lot of smaller consultancies are struggling." Michael's firm has been acquiring some of them. If you ever need help, I could put you in touch with someone. I appreciate that. My mother patted my hand. It's smart to have options, Sarah. Claire's just trying to help. My phone buzzed, a text from my business partner. Just closed the Meridian contract. 600K drinks tonight? I silenced the phone and picked up my menu. What's good here? The conversation moved on. Claire talked about house renovations. My mother talked about the birthday party planning. I ordered the salmon and let them assume I was worried about money. But that evening, I called Patricia. I want to set up a trust, I told her. For Emma, something they can't touch, can't question, can't claim I'm mismanaging. I want it ironclad. How much? 500,000 to start. I'll add more annually. That's a substantial trust for an 8-year-old. She's going to need it when this is over, I said, one way or another. The trust was established by April. Emma knew nothing about it. She went to school, she played with her friends, she did her homework at our kitchen table. She was happy. That was all that mattered. The second close call happened in June. Robert invited me to his house for a barbecue. Emma played in the pool with his grandchildren while the adults sat on the patio drinking wine and eating grilled vegetables. Patricia, Robert's wife, was holding court about their upcoming cruise to Alaska. We booked a suite, she announced. 2 weeks. The views are supposed to be spectacular. My mother sighed. That sounds lovely. Richard and I haven't traveled properly in years. Robert refilled his wine glass. You should come with us next time. We're thinking about Norway next summer. Sarah, you should think about taking a real vacation sometime. When was the last time you traveled? It's been a while, I said. Exactly. You work too hard for too little return. That's what happens when you don't have a real corporate structure. No paid vacation, no benefits. You should really consider that position I mentioned. My friend is still looking. Patricia leaned forward. Robert's right, and think about Emma. She should see the world. But that takes money, real money. You need security, not just scraping by. Emma was laughing in the pool, completely unaware that her future was being discussed like I was failing her. I'll think about it, I said. Robert's phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. Excuse me, I need to take this. He walked inside. Through the patio doors, I could hear his voice rising, something about an investment that hadn't performed as expected, something about needing to be more careful with retirement planning. Patricia noticed me listening. Don't worry about that. Robert's just frustrated with his advisor. Money management is so complicated when you have real assets to protect. I sipped my wine. Robert had maybe $2 million in total assets, if his house and retirement accounts were doing well. I'd passed him 2 years ago and he had no idea. But the next morning, I called my financial advisor. I want to diversify more, I told him. Move some assets into things they can't see on a standard background check. Private holdings, limited partnerships, things that don't show up on simple searches. Planning for something? Planning for everything. By July, I had moved $1.3 million into structures that would be nearly invisible to casual investigation. The rest remained in provable, documentable, show-your-work assets. I wanted them to see enough to be shocked. I didn't want them to see everything. The third close call happened in August, 1 month before the party. My mother hosted a family dinner. Everyone was there. Robert and Patricia, Claire and Michael, Richard, Emma, Robert's adult children and their families. 21 people around my mother's dining room table, eating prime rib and talking about money in the careful way wealthy people do when they want to brag but not seem crass. Michael was talking about a real estate investment that had tripled in value. Claire was nodding along, adding details about the neighborhood's appreciation. My mother was impressed. Real estate is so smart, Patricia said. It's tangible, not like stocks or those cryptocurrency things people keep talking about. Sarah, do you own your apartment or are you still renting? The table got quiet. Emma was sitting next to me, eating mashed potatoes, oblivious. I own, I said. Oh, that's good. A condo? A house. Patricia's eyebrows went up. Really? In this market, that must have stretched your budget. I manage. Well, good for you. It's important to have something, even if it's small. Equity is equity. Robert cleared his throat. Speaking of equity, Sarah, I've been thinking, have you considered what happens to your business if something happens to you? Do you have insurance, a succession plan? With Emma to think about, you really should have all that in place. I do. You do what? I have life insurance, disability insurance, a will, a trust for Emma, partnership agreements that specify what happens to my share if I die or become incapacitated. It's all handled. The table was quiet again. This was more than they'd expected. Claire recovered first. That's great, Sarah, really responsible. How much life insurance? This was the moment. I could deflect or I could give them just enough to make them curious. Enough, I said. My advisor recommended 5 million. I went with 7. My mother's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. $7 million? The premiums aren't as bad as you'd think, and with Emma, I wanted to be careful. Robert was staring at me. 7 million seems excessive for someone in your position. Are you sure you're not being oversold? I'm sure, but the premiums must be astronomical. Thousands a month, surely. I can afford it. Patricia laughed, but it sounded uncertain. Well, I suppose if you can afford it, though I have to say, it seems like a lot for someone who drives a Honda. I smiled. I like my Honda. The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. They were thinking now, wondering, calculating backwards from 7 million in life insurance to what kind of income would justify those premiums. I let them wonder. 3 days later, Patricia Reyes called me. I have everything ready. Documentation, valuations, timeline. If you want to do this at the birthday party, we can. But Sarah, are you sure? Once you do this, you can't take it back. Your relationship with these people will fundamentally change. It changed a long time ago, I said. They just didn't notice. What do you want to happen? What's the goal here? I thought about Emma, standing on the lawn, being told she didn't belong. I thought about 32 years of being underestimated, dismissed, patted on the head, and told to be realistic. I thought about every condescending comment, every pitying look, every assumption that I was failing when I was succeeding beyond anything they could imagine. I want them to see me, I said. Really see me, just once. They will, Patricia promised. When do you want to do it? My grandmother's birthday is September 21st. The party is at 2 in the afternoon. Be ready. I'll be there. I hung up and looked at the calendar on my kitchen wall. 3 weeks. 21 days until everything changed. Emma came into the kitchen, backpack slung over one shoulder. Mom, can Jessie come over after school tomorrow? Sure, baby. Are we going to great-grandma's party? Yes. Uncle Robert will be there. Yes, she made a face. He's always asking me about school like he thinks I'm going to say something wrong. I pulled her into a hug. What if I told you that Uncle Robert doesn't know as much as he thinks he does? About what? About anything, she giggled. Is that a secret? For now, I said, but not for much longer. The next 3 weeks moved like water, fast and unstoppable. I confirmed details with Patricia. I reviewed documentation. I practiced staying calm, keeping my face neutral, not giving anything away. I bought Emma a new white dress for the party. I got my hair trimmed. I acted like everything was normal. My mother called twice to coordinate food for the party. Claire called once to ask if I needed a ride, since my Honda was getting so old. Robert sent a group text about the photographer he'd hired, the family photo he wanted to take, the importance of everyone looking their best for Grandma. I responded to all of it with pleasant agreement. Yes, I'd bring a salad. No, I didn't need a ride. Yes, we'd be there on time for the photo. The morning of September 21st, I woke up at 6. Emma was still sleeping. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table with the folder Patricia had given me. Every page documented a piece of my life they'd never bothered to see. Every number proved something they'd never believed I could achieve. I closed the folder and went to wake Emma up. Big day, I told her. Great-grandma's party. I know, can I bring her the card I made? Of course. She'd drawn a picture of the two of them together, holding hands. My grandmother was the only one who'd never underestimated me. The only one who'd asked about my work with genuine interest. The only one who'd told me quietly at Emma's birth that I was stronger than the rest of them combined. We arrived at my grandmother's house at 1:45. The lawn was already filling with family. The caterers were setting up tables. The photographer was checking his light meter. My grandmother was holding court on the patio in a blue dress that matched her eyes, 80 years old and sharp enough to cut glass. She saw me and smiled. Really smiled, the way she only did for people she actually loved. I walked over and kissed her cheek. Happy birthday, Grandma. Thank you, dear, you look lovely, both of you. Emma handed her the card. My grandmother opened it carefully and studied the drawing. This is beautiful, Emma. I'm going to frame this. Really? Really? Will you help me find the perfect spot for it later? Emma nodded enthusiastically. Robert appeared at my elbow. Sarah, good you're here. The photographer wants to take the family photo at 2. Make sure Emma stays clean until then. She'll be fine. I'm serious. No grass stains, no spills. This is an important photo. He walked away before I could respond. Patricia, his wife, was arranging people on the lawn, directing traffic like she was staging a royal portrait. Claire and Michael were already in position. My mother was fussing with her hair. I watched them organize themselves, all of them so confident in their place, so certain of the hierarchy. The photographer called everyone over. I took Emma's hand and walked toward the group. We stood on the edge where Patricia directed us. Emma in her white dress, me in the navy dress I'd bought specifically because it photographed well and looked expensive without being flashy. Robert stepped forward. He looked at Emma, then at me. Then he spoke, his voice carrying across the lawn to where 43 people were watching. Actually, Sarah, this is just for blood family. Emma should sit this one out. The entire world narrowed to that moment, to my daughter's hand in mine, to the choice I was about to make between protecting her from pain now or teaching her something far more valuable about standing up when someone tries to erase you. I want to know if you would have said what I said next, because I still think about it. Emma's hand tightened in mine. She wasn't crying, but I could feel her confusion through her palm. She was 8 years old. She'd been told her whole life that family meant belonging, and now her uncle was telling her she didn't belong in a photograph because of biology she couldn't control and didn't understand. Robert stood there waiting, comfortable in his authority. The photographer looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Patricia was adjusting her position in the lineup, smoothing her dress. My mother was looking at the sky like she hadn't heard anything. Claire was checking her phone. 43 people were watching. Some of them looked uncomfortable. None of them said a word. I understood then why they hadn't intervened before, why they'd watched me be dismissed and diminished for 32 years without speaking up. It wasn't cruelty. It was easier. Easier to let Robert be Robert, to let Patricia say what she wanted, to maintain the fiction that this was just how our family worked. Speaking up would mean conflict. Silence meant peace. They'd chosen peace over me for 3 decades. Emma looked up at me. Mom. I could have left. I could have taken her hand and walked to the car and driven away and let them have their perfect blood family photograph. I could have protected her from this moment and dealt with it privately later. But I looked at my grandmother, standing on her patio, 80 years old, and watching this unfold with that particular stillness I recognized. She was waiting, not for me to leave, for me to choose. Actually, I said, my voice carrying across the lawn, I think Emma should stay right here. Robert's expression didn't change. Sarah, this isn't personal. It's just that for official family photos, we want blood relatives, you understand. I understand that you just told my daughter she doesn't belong. I didn't say that. I said this particular photo is for blood family. She can be in other photos. Which other photos, Robert? The ones you won't frame? The ones you won't send to the relatives? The ones that don't matter? His jaw tightened. You're being dramatic. Am I? Patricia stepped forward. Sarah, nobody is trying to hurt Emma's feelings. Robert is just trying to organize things properly. Your daughter is lovely, but she's not technically part of the bloodline. That's just a fact. Emma pulled her hand from mine. Before I could stop her, she walked directly to my grandmother. She stood on her toes and whispered something in my grandmother's ear that I couldn't hear from 15 feet away. My grandmother's expression changed. That stillness again, but deeper. Final. She reached into her silk clutch and pulled out an old manila envelope. The kind that had been sitting in a safe deposit box for decades. Her hands were steady as she walked down from the patio and crossed the lawn to where Robert stood. Your brother's adoption records, my grandmother said, her voice clear enough for everyone to hear, show that he is not, in fact, blood family either. The Whitfield name came through marriage, not birth. Your biological father was a man named James Morrison. I think if we're removing people based on blood, Robert, we should start with consistency. The lawn was very quiet. Robert stared at the envelope. That's not relevant. Isn't it? You just established blood as the criteria. By your own standard, you don't belong in this photo either. That's completely different. I was legally adopted. I have the name. Emma, my grandmother said, has her mother's name, and her mother is my granddaughter by blood, which means Emma is my great-granddaughter. She belongs in this photo more than you do by your own stated logic. Robert's face was red. Patricia had gone very still beside him. My mother was looking at her feet. Claire had stopped pretending to check her phone. The photographer cleared his throat. Should I just pack up? No, my grandmother said. We're going to take this photo. Everyone stays, including Emma. Robert looked at me, really looked at me perhaps for the first time in my entire life. He was calculating something, reassessing something, trying to figure out how I'd orchestrated this. I hadn't. Emma had done this herself. My 8-year-old daughter had walked up to her great-grandmother and said something that triggered the destruction of Robert's entire position. I wanted to know what she'd said. Later. Right now, I had a phone call to make. Excuse me, I said. I need a moment. I walked into my grandmother's house, through the kitchen, into the small study where she kept her important papers and her reading chair. I closed the door and pulled out my phone. Patricia Reyes answered on the second ring. File everything, I told her. Original timeline, I'm done waiting. You're sure? Completely. I can be there in 20 minutes with the documentation. Make it 15. I hung up and stood there for a moment, looking at the shelves of books my grandmother had collected over 80 years. Legal texts, biographies, novels, poetry. My grandfather had been a judge. My grandmother had been smarter than he was, but in her generation, smart women married judges instead of becoming them. She'd never underestimated me because she recognized herself. I walked back outside. The photo had been taken. Robert was talking to my mother in a low, tense voice. Patricia was on her phone. Claire was watching me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between confusion and concern. Emma ran over to me. Grandma Helen said I did good. You did perfect, baby. What did you tell her? I told her that Uncle Robert said I don't belong, and that it made me sad because you told me family is supposed to love you even when you're different. My throat tightened. That's exactly right. Grandma Helen got really quiet, and then she said she was going to fix it. She did fix it. Is Uncle Robert mad at me? No, baby, he's mad at himself. He just doesn't know it yet. My grandmother appeared beside us. She put her hand on Emma's shoulder. Why don't you go get some lemonade, dear? The catering table has those little cakes you like. Emma ran off. My grandmother watched her go, then turned to me. How long have you been waiting to do this? 4 years, since she was born, and they made it clear she wasn't good enough. And now I'm done being quiet about it. Good, my grandmother said. They've needed this for a very long time. A silver Mercedes pulled up the long driveway. Patricia Reyes got out carrying a leather briefcase. She was wearing a suit despite the weekend because she understood the importance of visual authority. She walked across the lawn like she owned it. People moved out of her way without thinking about it. Robert noticed her. Who is that? My attorney, I said. His expression shifted. Your attorney? Sarah, what is this? This is me being done. Patricia reached us and extended her hand to my grandmother. Mrs. Whitfield, happy birthday. I apologize for arriving unannounced. You're not unannounced, my grandmother said. I suspect my granddaughter has been planning this for quite some time. 4 years, Patricia confirmed. My mother appeared, Richard trailing behind her. Sarah, what on earth is going on? Why do you have a lawyer at Grandma's birthday party? Because I'm tired of being treated like I'm failing when I'm not. Nobody thinks you're failing. Really. When was the last time anyone in this family asked about my work without assuming it was struggling? When was the last time anyone asked about my life without offering condescending advice? My mother's mouth opened and closed. We're just trying to help. You're trying to feel superior. There's a difference. Robert stepped forward. Sarah, I don't know what you think you're proving here, but bringing a lawyer to a family party is incredibly inappropriate. Is it? You brought adoption records. That was different. Grandma brought those. At Emma's request because you hurt her. I didn't hurt her. I was organizing a photo. Patricia opened her briefcase. Mr. Whitfield, your niece has asked me to provide some documentation that she believes will bring clarity to certain family assumptions. With her permission, I'd like to share it now. I don't need to see any documentation. I think you do, my grandmother said. She'd positioned herself next to me, a clear statement of alliance. I think all of you do. Claire and Michael had moved closer. Robert's adult children and their families were watching from a distance. The caterers had stopped pretending to work. Everyone was watching now, all 43 people, waiting to see what happened next. Patricia pulled out a folder. Sarah has asked me to share information about her current financial position. The purpose is not to brag, but to correct ongoing misunderstandings that have affected her relationship with this family. My mother laughed nervously. This is ridiculous. Sarah, you don't need to prove anything. Actually, I do, because you've spent 8 years telling me I'm making bad choices, that I'm struggling, that I need to be more realistic, and I'm done letting you believe that. Robert crossed his arms. Fine, let's hear it. How much money do you make, Sarah? Enough to justify this dramatic production? Patricia pulled out a single sheet of paper. Sarah's personal income last year was $612,000. Her business, which she co-owns with 2 partners, grossed $8.3 million. Her personal net worth, verified by a forensic accountant, is currently $4.7 million. The lawn was very quiet. My mother's face had gone completely blank. Not pale, not shocked, just blank. Like her brain had stopped processing information. Claire spoke first. That's not possible. It's documented, Patricia said calmly. Tax returns, business filings, bank statements, investment accounts, all verified by independent third parties. Robert shook his head. You're lying. Sarah drives a Honda. She lives modestly. There's no way she has that kind of money. I live modestly, I said, because I choose to, not because I have to. But you never said anything. You let us think you were struggling. I never said I was struggling. You assumed I was struggling. There's a difference. Patricia pulled out another sheet. Sarah owns her home free and clear, purchased for $890,000, paid in cash. She has established a trust for her daughter containing $500,000 with provisions for annual additions. She carries $7 million in life insurance. Her investment portfolio is diversified across real estate, stocks, bonds, and private equity holdings. Michael, Claire's husband, was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why would I? So you could treat me differently because of money instead of treating me differently because you thought I didn't have any? Either way, you're not seeing me. You're seeing your assumptions. My mother found her voice. This is so typical of you, Sarah. Always so secretive. Always making people feel foolish. We were trying to help you. By telling me to get a real job. By suggesting I apply for food assistance. By offering me Claire's hand-me-downs. We didn't know. You didn't ask. You assumed. For 32 years, you've assumed I was less than I am. And I let you because I thought if I kept my head down and worked hard and proved myself quietly, eventually you'd notice. But you never did, so I'm making you notice now. Robert's voice was sharp. This is about revenge. You're trying to humiliate us. I'm trying to exist. I'm trying to have my daughter acknowledged as family without having to justify her existence. I'm trying to stop being patted on the head and told to be realistic when I'm more successful than most of you have ever been. Patricia closed the briefcase. There's one more piece of documentation. Sarah's business received an acquisition offer 6 months ago. The offer was for $12 million for her 33% stake. She declined. The business is currently valued at approximately $28 million, which would make her share worth roughly $9.2 million if she chose to sell. The silence was different now, heavier, final. Claire was looking at me with something like fear. You're worth that much? On paper. In reality, I'm worth exactly what I was worth an hour ago. The only thing that's changed is your awareness of it. My mother's voice was small. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed anything? Would you have stopped offering advice I didn't need? Would you have stopped assuming I was barely making it? Would you have treated Emma like she mattered? She didn't answer. Robert tried once more. This is all just money. It doesn't change who you are. You're right. It doesn't change who I am. But it changes your excuse for treating me the way you have. You can't claim you were helping someone who was struggling. You can't claim you were being realistic about my limitations. You were being cruel to someone who had already surpassed you, and you never bothered to look closely enough to see it. Patricia put a hand on my shoulder. I think that's everything you asked me to share. Not quite, I said. If you're still here, hit like. I need to know you saw that. I turned to face Robert directly. You removed my daughter from a family photo because of blood. Let's talk about blood. My grandmother's estate is worth approximately $18 million. I'm her only blood grandchild. Claire is my stepsister. You're adopted. When Grandma passes, and I pray that's not for many years, the majority of that estate will go to me, because of blood, by your own stated logic. Robert's face drained of color entirely. My grandmother's voice was steel. Sarah is correct. My will, which was updated last year, leaves the bulk of my estate to her. Not because of money, as she certainly doesn't need it, but because she's the only one who never asked for it. The only one who built something herself. The only one who understood that value isn't inherited, it's created. My mother made a sound like she'd been hit. Mother, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. And before you ask, yes, this has been my plan for years. Sarah knew nothing about it until this moment. That was true. I was staring at my grandmother in shock. She smiled at me. You thought you were the only one who could keep secrets? Robert found his voice. This is insane. You're punishing us for trying to help Sarah? I'm rewarding her for not needing help. There's a difference. Patricia cleared her throat. If I may, there's one final matter. Sarah has asked me to file a formal complaint with the family trust that manages the Whitfield Foundation. Several members of this family serve on that board. The complaint alleges mismanagement and requests a full audit of foundation finances. Robert's face went from pale to red. You can't do that. I can. I'm a major donor. The foundation's bylaws allow any donor contributing over $100,000 annually to request an audit. I've been contributing $200,000 a year for the past 5 years. In my own name, quietly, because I believe in the foundation's mission. But I also believe in accountability. This is a witch hunt. This is oversight. If there's nothing to hide, the audit will show that. Patricia pulled out one more document. The audit request was filed this morning. The Foundation's board will be notified Monday. Sarah's attorney will be copying all board members, including those present here today. Robert's wife Patricia had been silent this entire time. Now she spoke, her voice shaking. "You're trying to destroy us. I'm trying to exist without being destroyed by you. There's a difference." My mother was crying now, quiet tears that she wasn't bothering to wipe away. "I don't understand." "When did you become so cruel?" "I became exactly as cruel as I needed to be to protect my daughter from being erased. You want to talk about cruelty? You watched Robert tell an 8-year-old child she didn't belong. You said nothing. That's cruelty." Richard, my stepfather, finally spoke. "Sarah, your mother loves you. We all love you. You love the version of me you made up, the struggling single mother who needs your help. You never loved the actual me because you never bothered to find out who that was." Claire was staring at the ground. "I offered you my old clothes because I thought you needed them." "I know, that's the problem. You never asked if I needed them. You assumed. And when I said no thank you, you thought I was being proud instead of thinking maybe, just maybe, I could afford my own clothes." Michael put his arm around Claire. "We should go." "No," my grandmother said. "Nobody leaves. We're going to sit down like adults and finish this conversation." Robert shook his head. "I'm not staying here to be humiliated." "Then you're not welcome at future family events. Your choice." He stared at her. "You'd really ban me from family gatherings?" "I'll do whatever it takes to protect the people I love from being treated the way Sarah and Emma have been treated. You're my grandson by law, Robert. I raised you. I love you. But love doesn't mean tolerating cruelty." The caterers had given up pretending not to watch. Several of Robert's adult children were filming on their phones. This would be all over the family group chats by evening. I didn't care. Emma appeared at my side, holding a plate with 3 small cakes. "Mom, are we leaving?" "Not yet, baby." "Is everyone mad at us?" "Some of them are mad at themselves. They just don't know it yet." She considered this seriously. "Grandma Helen says you're the smartest person in the family." "Grandma Helen is biased. She says you're going to teach me to be smart like you." I pulled her close. "You're already smart, Emma. You're the one who told Grandma what Uncle Robert said. You stood up for yourself. That's the smartest thing anyone did today." Robert was leaving, Patricia following him. Several other family members were gathering their things, uncomfortable with the confrontation, unwilling to take sides. My mother stood frozen, Richard's arm around her shoulders, tears still running down her face. Claire hadn't moved. She was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Sarah," she said quietly, "I'm sorry." "For what specifically?" "For assuming, for not asking, for offering you Michael's firm's help like you were failing instead of thinking maybe you were succeeding on your own." It was the first genuine apology I'd received. "Thank you," I said. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why didn't you tell me? We were sisters, sort of. We grew up together." "Why let me think you were struggling?" "Because every time I tried to share something I was proud of, you topped it with something bigger. Every achievement I mentioned, you had a better one. After a while, I stopped mentioning anything. It was easier." She absorbed that. "I didn't mean to do that." "I know, that's what made it worse. You weren't trying to compete. You just assumed you were already winning." Michael pulled Claire gently toward their car. She went, looking back once with an expression that might have been understanding. My grandmother had moved to the patio and was sitting in her chair like a queen surveying her kingdom. Patricia Reyes was beside her, briefcase closed, mission accomplished. I walked over to them. "Thank you," I told Patricia. "You're welcome, though I suspect you didn't need me. Your grandmother had this handled." I looked at my grandmother. "The will, is that true?" "Every word. I've been planning it for 5 years. Since Emma was born and I saw how they treated both of you. You never said anything. Neither did you. We're alike that way. We wait, we watch, we act when the time is right. Is this the right time? You tell me, do you feel better or worse than you did an hour ago?" I thought about it. Different, not better or worse. Just different. That's the right answer. Emma was playing with some of the younger children on the far side of the lawn, her white dress already grass-stained, completely unbothered by the drama that had unfolded around her. "She doesn't understand what just happened," I said. "She understands that you protected her. That's all she needs to know right now. The rest she'll figure out when she's older." My mother approached slowly, Richard supporting her elbow like she might fall. Her mascara had run. Her careful makeup was ruined. "Sarah," she said, "can we talk privately?" I looked at my grandmother. She nodded slightly. "Fine," I said. "Let's talk." I had one more thing to say. We walked into my grandmother's house, through the living room filled with family photos spanning 8 decades, into the small sunroom at the back. My mother sat down heavily in a wicker chair. Richard stood by the door like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to be there. I don't know what to say, my mother began. Then don't say anything, just listen. She nodded, tears still wet on her cheeks. I needed you, I said. When Dad died, I needed you. When David left me, I needed you. When I had Emma alone and scared, I needed you. And every single time, you were too busy being disappointed in me to actually see me. I wasn't disappointed, I was worried. You were embarrassed. There's a difference. You were embarrassed that I wasn't like Claire. That I didn't marry well or dress right or say the right things at your parties. You wanted me to be someone I wasn't, and when I couldn't be that person, you decided I was failing instead of thinking maybe I was succeeding at being myself. Richard shifted uncomfortably. Your mother did the best she could. I'm not interested in your opinion, Richard. You married into this family when I was 9 years old. You've known Claire longer than you've known me. Your loyalty is clear. He didn't argue. My mother wiped her eyes. What do you want from me, Sarah? I want you to see Emma as your granddaughter, not as a mistake I made, not as evidence of my poor choices, as a child who deserves to be loved without conditions. I do love her. You let Robert exclude her from a family photo. You said nothing, that's not love. I didn't know what to say. Robert was so insistent, and I thought maybe he had a point about keeping things consistent. He had a point about blood. Mom, he's adopted. By his own logic, he shouldn't have been in that photo either, and you knew that. Grandma knew that, but you let him do it anyway because it was easier than standing up to him. She was quiet for a long moment. You're right. I know I'm right. That's not the question. The question is what happens now. What do you want to happen? I want you to choose. You can have a relationship with me and Emma based on who we actually are, not who you wish we were. Or you can keep your assumptions and your disappointment and your unsolicited advice, and you can do it without us. That's not fair. Fair would have been you asking about my life instead of assuming. Fair would have been you celebrating my success instead of offering me charity. Fair would have been you protecting your granddaughter instead of protecting your brother's ego. I'm done worrying about fair. My mother looked at Richard. He looked back helplessly. I need time, she said finally, to process this. Think about what you've said. Take all the time you need, but understand that the door doesn't stay open forever. I have spent 32 years waiting for you to see me. I'm not spending another 32. I left her there and walked back outside. Patricia Reyes was packing up her briefcase. My grandmother was holding court with several family members who had stayed, the ones who hadn't fled with Robert. Emma was still playing, oblivious and happy. Patricia saw me and walked over. How do you feel? Lighter, I said. Is that strange? Not at all. You've been carrying this for years. Now they're carrying it instead. What happens with the foundation audit? It proceeds as filed. The board will review the request Monday. If there's nothing to find, Robert will be fine. If there is something to find, that's not your problem. And if he comes after me legally? For what? Requesting an audit you're entitled to request. Sharing accurate information about your own finances? He has no case. He's angry and embarrassed, which is not the same as having grounds for a lawsuit. She left 20 minutes later. Several more families departed, uncomfortable with what they'd witnessed, unsure how to process what had happened. By 4 in the afternoon, only a dozen people remained. My grandmother, a few of her oldest friends, Emma, me, and 2 of Robert's adult children who had approached me quietly to say they'd had no idea their father had been so cruel. My grandmother called me over to the patio. Sit with me for a moment. I sat. She took my hand. I am proud of you, she said. Not for the money, for standing up, for protecting Emma. For refusing to disappear just because it would have been easier for everyone else. I didn't know you were changing your will. I changed it 3 years ago. After that Christmas when Patricia suggested you apply for food assistance and you just smiled and changed the subject. I knew then that you were playing a longer game than anyone realized. Were you waiting for this too? I was waiting for you to decide you were done waiting. There's a difference. Emma ran over, breathless and grass-stained. Can we go home soon? I'm tired. Yes, baby, let's go home. We said goodbye to my grandmother. She hugged Emma for a long time, then hugged me. Call me tomorrow, she said. We have things to discuss. About the will, about everything. We drove home in comfortable silence. Emma fell asleep in the back seat before we hit the highway. I watched her in the rearview mirror, her face peaceful, her white dress ruined and perfect. When we got home, I carried her inside and put her to bed still in her dress. She'd had enough for one day. We'd deal with baths and pajamas tomorrow. I sat in my living room in the house I owned, surrounded by the life I'd built, and waited to feel something. Regret maybe, guilt, something. Instead, I felt quiet. My phone buzzed, a text from Claire. I meant what I said, I'm sorry, can we talk sometime? I didn't respond immediately. I decide later if I wanted to rebuild that bridge or let it stay burned. Another text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Patricia Whitfield, Robert's wife. What you did today was unconscionable. You will regret this. I blocked the number. A third text from my grandmother. The family trust attorney just called me. The audit has already triggered some interesting conversations. Call me in the morning. I would. The foundation audit took 6 weeks. It revealed that Robert had been using foundation funds for personal expenses. Nothing enormous, nothing that would lead to criminal charges, but enough to force his resignation from the board. He stepped down quietly in November. His reputation in certain social circles was permanently damaged. Patricia filed for separation in December. Their divorce was finalized 8 months later. Claire and I spoke twice after the party. Brief, careful conversations where we established boundaries and acknowledged that we'd never been as close as my mother had wanted us to be. We exchange Christmas cards now, nothing more. My mother took 3 months to reach out. When she finally called, she asked if she could take Emma to lunch. Just the two of them. I said yes. Emma came home and reported that Grandma had apologized and bought her ice cream. She asked about school, Emma said, and she listened to my answers instead of talking about Aunt Claire. That was progress. My mother and I have dinner once a month now. We talk about Emma, about her school, about my work. She doesn't offer advice anymore. She doesn't compare me to Claire. She doesn't suggest I need help. It's not the relationship I wanted when I was 16, but it's honest. That's enough. My grandmother passed away 2 years after her 80th birthday. She was surrounded by family, lucid until the end, and utterly unrepentant about the will. She left the bulk of her estate to me, exactly as she'd said she would. $18 million, split between direct inheritance and the foundation that now bears her name. I used part of it to endow scholarships for single mothers pursuing business degrees. The rest went into trust funds for Emma and future grandchildren I hope to have someday. Robert contested the will. The case was dismissed in 4 months. He moved to Arizona shortly after. We haven't spoken since. Emma is 10 now. She goes to private school, plays soccer, takes piano lessons, and has no idea she has a trust fund that will pay for any college in the country. She knows her great-grandmother loved her. She knows her mother protected her. She knows that family means people who show up, not just people who share blood. Last week, she asked me why Uncle Robert didn't come to family things anymore. I told her the truth, that he made choices that hurt people, and sometimes when you hurt people enough, you lose the privilege of being close to them. She thought about that for a moment, then said, "That makes sense," and went back to her homework. I run a successful consulting firm. I drive a nicer car now, a Lexus, because Emma pointed out that the Honda was 15 years old and maybe it was okay to have nice things. I still live in the same house. I still value privacy over flash, but I don't hide anymore. Last month, I was invited to speak at a Women in Business conference. The topic was building wealth as a single mother. I accepted. During the Q&A, someone asked how I dealt with family members who didn't support my ambitions. I stopped waiting for their permission, I said. I stopped expecting them to see me and started making sure they couldn't ignore me. There's a difference. The room applauded. I don't hate my mother. I don't hate Robert. I don't even hate Patricia, though I suspect she still hates me. Hate requires emotional investment I don't have anymore. They're just people who made choices, and I'm a person who made different choices, and now we all live with the consequences. My hands had stopped shaking years ago. I had been holding my breath for 3 decades. I let it out slowly at my grandmother's birthday party, and I haven't held it since. So, did I go too far, or not far enough? Tell me in the comments.